I never thought I'd be the guy caught in this kind of mess, but here I am, trying to make sense of a world I thought I knew. My name's Mike, and I was with Lisa for about 6 years before everything fell apart. At first, everything seemed normal, or at least I thought it was. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always believed we had a solid, honest relationship. She was fiery, a bit bitchy sometimes, but I liked that about her. She was real, or so I thought. Lately, though, something changed. She started being more distant, secretive even. She'd come home late from work, vanish into the shower for hours, and her phone became a fortress. She'd lock it, hide it, and if I ever tried to glance at it, she'd give me that look, a mix of annoyance and condescension. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was just stressed, or maybe it was work stuff. But then, little things started adding up. She'd get weirdly defensive when I'd ask about her day or who she was texting. Sometimes she'd leave her phone around, and I'd see her quickly deleting messages or clearing her browsing history. One night I stayed up late just because I couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. I was scrolling through her phone, something I know I shouldn't have done, but I was desperate for answers. I knew I was crossing a line, but I was also desperate to catch her in the act or at least find some proof. That's when I saw it. Naked photos. Not just of her, but with someone else. The guy was her neighbor, Jake. I recognized his face right away. The photos were intimate and they were clearly recent, probably from the last couple of weeks. My stomach sank. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She was lying to my face about everything, about the fling, about Jake, about us. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I kept staring at the screen, feeling this weird mix of anger, humiliation, and sadness. How could she do this? How could she pretend everything was fine? I thought I knew her, but now I was questioning every moment, every word, every touch. Was I just fooling myself into thinking we had something real? Was our marriage nothing but an illusion? I needed to confront her right then. I didn't sleep that night. I think I stared at her in the morning like I was trying to process what I'd found. When I finally brought it up, her reaction was classic Lisa, defensive, bitchy, full of lies. She started flipping the script, saying I was paranoid, that it was just sex, that Jake was just someone she hung out with, that I was overreacting. She called me insecure, said I was making a big deal out of nothing. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. I'd seen enough. This wasn't some innocent fling. It was something more, and I had proof. The trust was shattered. The worst part, I couldn't tell if I was still married to her or just living in this terrible illusion. After her little talk, I felt like I was walking on thin ice. Part of me wanted to believe her, to tell myself maybe I was overreacting or misinterpreting the photos. But deep down, I knew the truth. She lied, she cheated, and she thought she could get away with it. That realization hit me hard. I started noticing all the little things she did differently, how she'd avoid looking me in the eye, the way she'd quickly change the subject if I mentioned Jake, and how she became extra defensive whenever I brought up the subject of trust or fidelity. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, real ones, not her bullshit excuses. I decided I'd confront her again, but this time I was ready. I planned to catch her in a lie, to get her to admit everything. The day I decided to do it, she was in her usual bitchy mood, snapping at me for no reason, throwing around insults about my insecurities. Honestly, I was sick of her attitude, sick of feeling like I was living with a stranger. I told her I knew about Jake, about the photos, and that I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Her response was a storm. She rolled her eyes, scoffed, and then threw a sharp comment my way about how I was crazy for even thinking she'd cheat. She said I was paranoid, that Jake was just a friend she'd known forever, and that I was overreacting because I didn't trust her. She called me insecure, said I was jealous and pathetic. It was so typical of her to turn it around like that, to make me feel like I was the one at fault. But I knew better. I wasn't stupid. I knew what I saw, and I knew she was lying through her teeth. That night I stayed up again, staring at my phone, trying to decide what to do next. I felt a mix of rage and hurt. I wanted to confront her publicly, tear her apart in front of everyone, but I also knew that wouldn't solve anything. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was okay. My mind was racing. Should I tell everyone? Should I confront Jake? Or was I just going to keep it to myself and get out of this mess? I didn't want to live in this nightmare, but I also didn't want to lose her without a fight. Somehow, I knew I had to come up with a plan, something that would finally make her admit what she'd done, or at least teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. Over the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything else. The images of her and Jake kept popping into my head, like some sick slideshow I couldn't turn off. Every time I saw her smirk or heard her dismiss my concerns with her typical bitchy attitude, it made me want to explode. I started questioning everything about us, what was real, what was just her lying to keep me quiet, and how long she'd been playing me for a fool. One afternoon, I decided I needed to know whether Jake was just some fling or if this was more serious. I started digging into her phone again, looking for anything that might give me more clarity. I was careful this time, no more impulsive scrolling. I wanted proof, something concrete. That's when I found a string of messages between her and Jake. At first it was just teasing, flirtatious talk, but then things started getting more explicit. The messages were full of promises, talk about secret meetings, and how they couldn't keep their hands off each other. There were even plans for another hangout that weekend. Reading those messages made my stomach turn. I felt a surge of anger, pure, hot rage. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to lie about everything, to act like they were just friends when she was planning her next rendezvous. With him, I was furious, but I also felt this deep sense of betrayal. How could she do this to me? After all those years, I thought I knew her, but it was all a lie. She was a bitch, a liar, and a cheat. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was that I couldn't just sit back and let this slide anymore. I had to make her face the truth, even if it meant ripping apart our marriage in the process. That night, I decided I had enough evidence. I printed out some of the texts, took screenshots of the photos, and started putting everything together. I was going to confront her, but I wanted to do it with a plan, something that would guarantee she couldn't wiggle her way out of it. I knew her too well. She was a master manipulator, and I had to be smarter than her if I wanted to get some real answers. I also realized I wasn't going to be the same after this. Whether we stayed together or not, I'd never look at her the same way again. The trust was gone, and I could feel it slipping away with each passing minute. That night, I finally decided I was going to confront her face to face. I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't know anymore. She needed to own up to what she'd done, or at least be forced to admit the truth. I planned it carefully. I waited until she was in the shower, thinking she'd feel safe and relaxed. That's when I slipped her phone out of her purse, knowing it was the only way to get her guard down completely. I'd already prepared everything, screenshots, proof of the messages, the photos I'd found. I needed her to see it all at once, no more bullshit excuses. I sat in the living room, phone in hand, waiting for her to come out so I could finally lay it all out. When she emerged, looking annoyed that I was still awake, I didn't hold back. I threw the phone on the table and told her I knew everything, about Jake, the photos, the messages. I let her see every screenshot I had, watch her face turn pale as she realized I wasn't bluffing. Her reaction was priceless. She froze for a second, then started with her typical attitude, what I expected. She told me I was just jealous, insecure, that Jake was nothing but a harmless fling, and that I was overreacting. She said I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat on me, that I was paranoid. I could see the lies trying to come out of her mouth, but I wasn't having it. I told her I wasn't stupid anymore, that I saw through her bullshit. I told her I didn't want to hear her excuses, that I wanted her to admit she'd been lying for weeks, maybe months. She started crying, fake tears, I knew that, and then she turned her bitchy attitude up a notch. She said, "You're making a big deal out of nothing, as usual. Jake and I were just having fun. It's not like I slept with him yet." That last part hit me like a punch. She was practically bragging about how she hadn't crossed the line yet, but I could see where this was headed. She was dangerous. I realized I'd been blind, that I'd been living in an illusion of this perfect marriage, but it was all a lie. And now I was furious. Furious at her, at myself for not seeing it sooner, and at the whole damn situation for turning my life upside down in a matter of days. The more she lied, the angrier I got. I felt like I was losing control, but I knew I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her that her harmless fling was over, that I wasn't going to play her game anymore. I explained that I had enough proof, more than enough, and I was done pretending I didn't know the truth. Her face twisted into this defiant sneer. She told me I was overreacting, that she still loved me, and that I was just being paranoid because I couldn't handle her having a life outside of our marriage. Yeah, right. She kept insisting it was just sex, that she and Jake never meant anything serious, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But I wasn't buying it. I told her that I'd had enough of her lies, that I wanted her to leave if she was going to continue hiding things and sneaking around. Of course, she started screaming, calling me names, saying I was a jealous, insecure idiot. She even tried to turn the tables, accusing me of cheating on her with some coworker, which was just laughable at that point. I felt my blood boiling. I was done playing nice. I told her she could pack her bags and leave, that I didn't want to see her anymore if she was going to keep this up. At the same time, a strange calm came over me. I knew this was the end of everything we had, and I was finally ready to face it. As she stormed off, yelling more insults, I looked around our house, our life, and saw how everything had changed in just a few days. I felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and dread because I realized I'd never trust her again. I also understood how much I'd been living in a fantasy of what we once had. Now I had to figure out what to do next. Did I fight for her? Did I cut her out entirely? The choices felt overwhelming, but deep down, I knew I couldn't keep pretending she was innocent or that this was just some mistake. The damage was done, and the only thing left was figuring out how to pick up the pieces. In the days that followed, everything seemed to crumble around me. I moved out, not because I wanted to, but because I knew I couldn't stay under the same roof with her after everything. The house felt emptier than ever, and even though I was physically gone, mentally I was still trying to process the chaos. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, her lies, her sneers, the pictures, the messages. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly, a little numb. How could someone I trusted so completely turn out to be so different? I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind, or just too in love to see what was really happening. The worst part, the realization that I'd wasted years on someone who didn't deserve my trust. I kept thinking about the girl I married, her fiery attitude, her bitchy comebacks, her supposed independence, and how all of that was just a mask for her own selfish needs. It made me question everything about my choices, about who I was supposed to be. Still, somewhere deep inside, I knew I had to pick myself up. I couldn't let her define me or keep me trapped in this mess forever. I told myself I wouldn't sweep the pain under the rug. I had to face it, accept it, and learn from it. It's been tough, no doubt. Sometimes I see her picture in my mind and that old anger bubbles up again. But I also realize that I was living in an illusion, a fairy tale that she was feeding me until she decided to break it. Now I see her for what she is. A selfish, manipulative woman who thought she could have everything her way, including cheating and lying without consequence. I don't regret confronting her or seeing the truth. It hurt like hell, but it was better than living in this cloud of lies. I've started to rebuild my life piece by piece. I've cut her out, blocked her from everything, and I'm focusing on myself now, on healing and moving forward. I've learned that trust is fragile, that people can surprise you in the worst ways, and that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away. It's not easy, and there are days I still feel the sting of betrayal, but I know I'll be okay. I'm stronger than I thought, and even though this pain will linger, I refuse to let it define my future.